I learned some things as a paralegal manager that I wished I knew when I was a paralegal, and I want to share some of those things with you. You've probably heard me talk about how much I loved being a litigation paralegal. I had a very successful career as a litigation paralegal. I was working at what I felt was the top of my game. I was second chair at trial. My attorneys would frequently, not once, but many times, tell me that I was indispensable. I was also rewarded financially with really big raises and bonuses. The reason I tell you that is because as much success as I saw, if I'd known some of the things that I learned after I became a paralegal manager, I could have seen even more success when I was a litigation paralegal. That's my goal for you, to be wildly successful as early in your career as possible. All right, these are not in any particular order of importance or anything. I'm just going to run through the top 4 or 5. And if I think of more later, I'll do another video for you. Lesson 1. It's the practice of law, but it's still a business. During my paralegal years, I was mainly focused on the legal side of operations. However, moving into the management role, I gained a new perspective, the business aspect of a law firm. Understanding that economics, marketing strategies, client relationships, all of those things are vital in making sure that the firm's growth and survival keeps increasing. Had I realized this earlier, I could have contributed more to the firm beyond my paralegal responsibilities and developed a more well-rounded approach to my work. Just like every business, if a law firm doesn't make money, they have to close their doors. Okay, so we kind of know this, but if you're like I was, you might have thought, why would that matter to me? Or why would that have mattered to me back then? What can you learn and take away from that? Now, that being said, it leads you into lesson 2 that I learned, is that it's not your business. What happens in a firm is that you have to find a balance between work and your personal life. Maybe you've heard the recent take on it, we call, work-life balance now, work-life integration. There's no such thing as finding balance. It's called work-life integration. Work-life balance and work-life integration are 2 different concepts. Work-life balance refers to the concept of dividing your time between work and your personal life, your energy too. The aim is to establish this clear distinction and balance between work and personal commitments. And it prevents one from excessively kind of overshadowing the other. It requires you creating boundaries and to make sure that neither work nor personal life is neglected. Well, we all know how that goes and what happens with that. Our work life takes over and we have no personal life. So lesson 3 would be to master the art of delegation. And earlier in my career, one important lesson I learned as a manager is the art of delegation. When I was a paralegal, I felt the need to take on every task myself to make sure it was done to my standard. You know the saying, if you want something done right, do it yourself. I lived by that motto. It's not that I never delegated while I was a paralegal. In fact, in my later years, I had a project assistant assigned to me. She was great, but all I really did was give her the things I didn't want to do or that I knew the work product wasn't going to go directly to an attorney. I could have done a better job delegating if I understood back then what it really means to delegate effectively. You know why this is important? Because it would have freed up my time to work on higher level projects. The most important part of delegating is to set a specific time or stage for the project and then for them to check in with you. For example, if you're getting a project assistant to put together, say, a set of deposition prep notebooks for 10 upcoming depositions, you don't want them to do all 10 notebooks and then bring them to you next week only to find out that they were not correct. They're not what you were expecting. Instead, have them put together one, bring it to you, give them feedback, and then they can move on to the next one. On the flip side of that, let's say you're on the receiving end of the project. Your attorney asks you to do those notebooks. They're probably not going to ask you to check in with them and let them see the first notebook. Then take it upon yourself to bring them that first notebook and ask if that's what they had in mind, instead of pushing through that whole project without knowing if that's what they really wanted. Lesson 4, know your numbers. They're more important than you think. And that's especially true if you're a paralegal who works in a law firm with a billable hour requirement, which was what I talked about in the last video. But this holds true even if you don't have a billable hour number. If you're a personal injury paralegal who doesn't have to enter billable hours, then know how many active claim files you're managing every month, how many settled this month, and how much or how many trials you've had and what the results of those trials were. If you're a real estate paralegal, how many closings did you complete last year? And what was the dollar amount of those closings, like in total numbers? The numbers are more important than you think for a couple of reasons. One, your current employer is looking at those numbers. It's the KPIs in the business. KPIs, key performance indicators. It's how all businesses measure and evaluate the strength of their business. So if you work in a law firm that has a billable hour requirement of 1,600 hours for paralegals and 2,000 for associates, but most of you are usually hitting 75 to 80% of those numbers, it tells the firm that there's not enough work or there's too many people. In other words, we've got too many people, and if it continues, we might have to consider some layoffs. If you're at a firm that doesn't have billable hours, let's say you're at a plaintiff's firm, and they might look at how many total active files they have, what percentage of those are on your plate, what percentage of those are you're reaching settlement or on other people's plate, how many reached it in 9 months versus 18 months. Why might they do that? Because that's 9 months of delayed cash flow if something is taking 18 months on average. The longer that personal injury file sits dormant, the longer it takes for cash to come into the doors. And that's to pay the bills. Second, because your potential future employer is probably going to ask you about those numbers. As a paralegal manager at a large firm, I wanted to know what the typical billable hour year looked like for a potential hire, because I want to know if that person could handle the pace of a particular team. If you know your numbers, you'll also know if that potential employer might be a good fit. Here's a perfect example. There was a particular law firm in Atlanta that I knew had a billable hour minimum of 1,800 hours for their paralegals. That wasn't you get a bonus if you hit that number. It was, if you don't hit that number, your job could be at risk. I knew of other firms that had 1,500 hour requirements, and that meant you were eligible for a bonus. If you're working at that firm and you know your numbers most years, maybe they were somewhere between 1,400, 1,500, why in the world would you want to go to work for a firm that had an 1,800 hour minimum billable hour goal? You could be sitting in the interview and the recruiter told you they're going to pay you 10, 20 grand more than what you're making at your current firm. Will that matter if you lose your job in 6 months? Lesson 5. Management knows who the bad apples and underperformers are. I remember as a paralegal being so frustrated that I'd be busting my butt and see other paralegals who would come in late, leave early, spending a lot of time chit-chatting with coworkers, take extra long lunches, etc. You know, there's at least one in every office. If you're dealing with that, I empathize with you. I was there. It can feel deflating. I remember thinking, why do I bother to work so hard while others are getting away with that kind of stuff? Ultimately, though, I didn't do anything because that's just not who I am. And it's probably not who you are. Here's what I can tell you from a manager's perspective that might help if you're dealing with that at your job. In most situations, those people are not getting the raises and bonuses that you are. If you can see it, that behavior, others in your office can see it too. The attorneys see it. That's probably why they prefer to work with you. The managers see it. Other paralegals see it. If you're like most people, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, Anne. If they all see it, why aren't they doing anything about it? Here's the thing. It takes a while, especially in a bigger firm. It takes a while to get rid of someone, even someone who deserves to be fired. In a small firm, in some states that have at-will employment, that office manager might be able to walk into that paralegal's office tomorrow and just say, things aren't working out. We're letting you go. That doesn't happen in a big firm. In this next statement, you're probably not going to like it if you're the hard worker. It takes even longer if that underperformer person works for a rainmaker partner. I hate to say it, but it's true. And it's from the management perspective. I just really want to throw these things out there. The podcast episodes where I talk about what I wished I'd known, back when I was a paralegal, and especially giving you this paralegal manager's perspective, I don't think it's anywhere out there. I don't think anybody else is doing it. And so, I truly enjoyed my work as a paralegal manager. And now, I've been in business 13 years now in the paralegal boot camp. And I thought, as much as I pass on paralegal tips and general tips on how to do a better job and litigation skills you might need and time entry and all of that, occasionally I'm going to throw out a video or a podcast episode or two about things that I learned as a paralegal manager that would have helped me if I'd known that when I was a paralegal. And so hopefully you'll get some great insight out of these too. All right, jump in the comments below and let me know if these tips were valuable to you. And be sure to subscribe so that you can get notified when the next video comes out. I've got a bunch of videos right here on this channel with lots of paralegal tips to help you fast track your career.